The snack was still in my mouth when Ryuji Kurogane checked his watch. It was a chocolate bread from the school store. I had paid for it with my own money. Just like I had paid for the canned coffee, chips, melon bun, and strawberry milk hanging in the plastic bag on my wrist. But the bread was not for me. Ryuji had told me to bring it back like a dog. So I stood in the middle of Hakusei Private Academy's courtyard, with the wrapper clenched between my teeth, while rich students laughed and pointed their phones at me. Not a student, not a person, a warning. Hakusei was the kind of school where family names mattered more than report cards. Ryuji's name was Kurogane, and that meant teachers lowered their eyes. Students laughed before his jokes finished, and nobody asked why one boy could order another boy around like property. He tapped his watch. You were slow. I wanted to say the store was crowded. I wanted to say he had sent me during the busiest break. I wanted to say that every coin in that bag was money my mother could not easily replace. Instead, I lowered my eyes. That was how I survived. Someone behind him zoomed in with their phone. Another student whispered that I really did look like a dog. A third asked if I knew how to wag my tail. Then Mr. Hayashi walked past the courtyard. He saw everything. I know he did because he cleaned his glasses the moment he saw Ryuji. He always did that. It gave him 3 seconds to look away before the first shove, the first insult, or the first slap. Ryuji slapped me anyway. The bread fell from my mouth. The courtyard went quiet for 1 perfect second. That silence was worse than the laughter. Everyone was waiting to see if I understood the rule. Status was not something you earned at Hakusei. Status was something a crowd forced you to accept. Ryuji pointed at the bread. Pick it up. My glasses slid down my nose as I bent over. My face burned hotter than the mark on my cheek. I could hear the phones recording. I could hear students trying not to laugh too early. But even then, I watched. I watched who laughed because they enjoyed it. I watched who laughed because they were afraid. I watched who looked away, who smiled too hard, and who checked whether a teacher was coming. I did not know it yet, but that habit would save me later. Before the white pearl, before Kokuryu, before my body became something no one could understand, I had only one real skill. I could read a room that wanted me hurt. Ryuji saw me pick up the bread and smiled like the world had proven him right. He thought fear meant I was empty. He thought silence meant I would stay beneath him forever. At that time, I believed him too. By the time I got home, my cheek had stopped hurting, but my chest had not. Her apartment sat above a closed laundromat on a street that smelled like oil, rain, and food stalls. Stairs creaked, the hallway light flickered. The rooms were so small that even silence felt cramped. My mother was at the table counting coins from her takoyaki stall. Her name was Yuto Arai. Everyone near the station, she was the kind takoyaki lady. To me, she was the only person who still said my name like it belonged to someone worth keeping. She looked up and smiled. You're late, Yuto. Did something happen? I said no too fast. She noticed. Of course she noticed. Her hands paused over the coins. They were rough from work, red around the knuckles, and marked with little burns from years of hot pans and oil. She tried to hide them when she caught me looking, but I had already seen them. Is school difficult? She asked. That question should have helped. Instead, it scared me. If I told her the truth, she would picture it. The courtyard, the phones, the bread in my mouth, Ryuji's hand against my face. She would blame herself for sending me to a school that treated poor students like entertainment. So I swallowed the truth and said the only thing I could say without breaking. I wanted transfer. Her expression changed. Transfer, why? I just want to. Did someone do something to you? Her voice was gentle. That made it worse. If she had scolded me, I could have stayed angry. If she had dismissed me, I could have felt misunderstood. But she was worried, and I could not stand the thought of my shame reaching her. So I struck the only person who was not trying to hurt me. Why do I need a reason? I shouted. I said I want to transfer. Why can't you just listen? The apartment went still. My mother did not shout back. She just looked at me with a kind of sadness that made me wish she had been angry instead. I slammed my door before she could answer. The sound filled my room, then disappeared, leaving me alone with what I had done. For a few minutes, I told myself she did not understand. I told myself I had no choice. Then I remembered her hands. The burns, the coins, the way she saved the better pieces of dinner for me and pretended she was already full. I had not fought Ryuji. I had not fought the students recording me. I had not fought the teacher who looked away. But I had raised my voice at the only person who loved me without needing proof I was worth loving. That was when I cried, quietly with my back against the bed, because I did not want her to hear. And also because a small, childish part of me wanted her to hear and come in anyway. She did not. She let me keep the last piece of pride I had. That made it hurt more. The next morning, I woke up late. Usually my mother knocked twice before my alarm finished ringing. She always joked that I slept like someone trying to escape the world. But that morning, there was no knock. For 1 second, I thought she had left because of what I said. Then the door opened, and she stepped inside carrying a paper envelope. Her hair was messy from the wind. Her eyes looked tired. Her stall apron was folded over one arm, which meant she had already been outside before sunrise. I talked to the office, she said. What office? The new school's office, and the landlord near it. She placed the envelope on the table. Kokuryu Metropolitan High accepted the transfer request. It is not as famous as Hakusei, but it has good programs. The room is small and the heater is old, but it is close to campus. I stared at her. You mean I can go, if you really want to? Relief came first. No more courtyard, no more Ryuji waiting with that smile, no more students filming me like my humiliation was lunchtime entertainment. Then guilt followed so quickly, it almost knocked the relief out of me. My mother opened the envelope. Inside was rent money, food money, transportation money, and one extra bill folded carefully. "This is $100, she said. "For emergencies, do not waste it on snacks." She tried to smile at her own joke, but the joke broke halfway. I looked at her hands as she pushed the money toward me. The skin was rough and dry. The burn marks near her thumb were darker than before. Those hands had stood over hot pans, counted coins, carried boxes, washed dishes, and now paid the price of my escape. I wanted to apologize for shouting. I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to say Hakusei had become a place where I disappeared one piece at a time. But the words stayed trapped, so I bowed my head and whispered, "Thank you." My mother reached toward my hair, then stopped before touching me. Maybe she remembered last night. Maybe she was afraid I would pull away. Maybe she was giving me space, because it was the only protection she could afford. "I cannot go with you," she said. "I still have the stall, I know. You have to eat properly, I will. You have to call, I will." We both knew I was answering too quickly. She smiled anyway. It was not a happy smile. It was the kind of smile someone wears when the best choice still hurts. When I left, she stood at the bottom of the stairs and waved until I turned the corner. I carried the envelope in my bag like it was heavier than books. For the first time in months, I had a future without Ryuji in it. But every step away from home felt like I was walking on my mother's hands. The new city did not feel like a fresh start. It was louder than my old town, with trains above the streets and billboards flashing over crowds that never slowed down. Kokuryu Metropolitan High was beyond the station district, but my cheap studio was down a narrow road where the buildings leaned too close together. I kept one hand on my bag. Inside were my transfer papers, my mother's money, and the emergency bill she had given me with hands that should have been resting. I was trying to believe distance could save me. Then a man in yellow sunglasses stepped into my path. He wore a pale coat, even though the weather was warm. His smile was calm in a way that did not match the alley. The sunglasses caught the light from a convenience store sign, turning his eyes into two yellow flashes. "Yuto Arai," he said. I froze. People who knew my name usually wanted something. He held out a small clear wrapper. Inside was a smooth white pearl, round and bright, like candy made by someone who had never seen candy before. "If you wish to be the strongest," he said, "take this." A normal person would have refused. But refusal was not something I was good at. Ryuji had trained it out of me one order at a time. A stranger offering something strange still felt easier to obey than to challenge. So I took it. The man smiled like I had already agreed to something bigger than I understood. I shoved the wrapped pearl into my pocket and hurried away. A few blocks later, I bumped into a woman near the crosswalk. It was barely a collision. Her bag slipped from her shoulder, and I bent down at once. "I'm sorry, are you okay?" She said she was fine. Her boyfriend did not care. He grabbed my collar before I could step back, accusing me of touching her on purpose. The woman tried to stop him. She said it was an accident. She said I had apologized. Truth did not matter to him. The moment he saw someone smaller, nervous, and alone, he had already decided I was safe to punish. By the time I reached the studio, my face hurt again, my glasses sat crooked, and my bag strap was stretched from where he had pulled me around. The room looked like it was apologizing for existing. One narrow bed, a rusted sink, wallpaper peeling near the window, a heater that rattled even while turned off. The ceiling hung low, like it wanted me to stay small. I sat on the floor. In my pocket, the white pearl waited. "If you wish to be the strongest, take this." I almost threw it away. Then I thought of Ryuji, the courtyard, the bread, my mother's money. The boyfriend's hand on my collar, every person who saw weakness and turned it into permission. I unwrapped the pearl. It smelled faintly sweet, like sugar and rain. I swallowed it before I could change my mind. Nothing happened. No light, no miracle. It just tasted strangely good, then vanished. I stared at my hands for a long time. When nothing changed, I lay down on the thin mattress and laughed once. Of course miracles were fake. The next morning, the ceiling looked lower. At first I thought I was dreaming. My body felt too light. My arms looked longer. The ache in my face was gone. When I stood, my balance corrected itself so smoothly that the floor seemed to move under me. I stumbled to the sink mirror. The boy in the reflection was me. That was the terrifying part. Not a stranger, me. My face had sharpened, but the eyes were mine. My shoulders were broader. My posture had changed. My old glasses no longer fit because I did not need them to see. Every crack in the mirror, every dust line on the sink, every vibration from the heater stood out with impossible detail. The pearl had not replaced me. It had pulled something out of me. Some best possible version, buried inside my own body. But when I touched the mirror, my hands still trembled. My body had changed overnight. My fear had not. Kokuryu Metropolitan High was not kinder than Hakusei. It only wore a different uniform. The campus was divided by programs. Sports track students owned the field. Business track students gathered near the glass lobby, checking watches, shoes, and family names before deciding who deserved eye contact. Media track students lived through their phones, recording everything before asking what it meant. At Hakusei, hierarchy had one crown. At Kokuryu, every track had its own. I entered with my transfer papers held too tightly and my old glasses in my bag. I wanted to be invisible, a quiet student in the back row, a name no one bothered to remember. That plan died before homeroom. People stared. Not like they stared at old Yuto. Back then, their eyes slid over me until Ryuji pointed. Now their eyes stopped. Girls whispered behind their hands. Boys looked me up and down with irritation, as if my face had insulted them. A student near the lockers asked if I was a model. Another said no model would transfer into Kokuryu midterm. A third said I looked like trouble. I kept my head down. That made it worse. A confident student walks like he expects space. A dangerous student walks like he knows how to take it. I walked like someone apologizing to the floor, but my body no longer matched the apology. At lunch, a sports track enforcer named Daigo Shiba decided to test me. He was taller than most students and carried his shoulders like every hallway was a competition. 2 teammates followed behind him. A few media track students saw his pace and raised their phones before anything happened. Daigo stopped in front of me near the courtyard steps. "You're the transfer, right?" I nodded. "People are saying you act mysterious." "I'm not trying to." "That's what mysterious people say." Laughter moved through the crowd. I started to step around him. He blocked me. Old Yuto would have apologized until he hated himself. Old Yuto would have searched for a teacher and already known none would come in time. I was still old Yuto inside. So when Daigo's hand shot toward my collar, fear hit first. And the world changed. His fingers moved slowly. Not actually slowly. I could hear the scrape of his shoe, the gasp nearby, the shift of weight from his back foot. But it all arrived in pieces I could read. Shoulder first, elbow next, wrist 2 open, balance leaning forward. My body moved before I decided to move. I stepped aside. Daigo's hand cut through empty air. The crowd did not laugh. He tried again, faster. A shove this time, meant to put me down in front of everyone. I saw the intent before the motion finished. My foot slid back. My shoulder turned. His palm missed, and his own momentum carried him one embarrassing step forward. A phone dropped somewhere. Daigo stared at me like I had broken a rule he trusted. I was breathing too hard. I had not fought back. I had not hit him. I had barely touched him. But to the students watching, that made it worse. The boy who gets lucky once looks lucky. The boy who avoids 2 attacks without raising his hands looks like he knows something. Daigo came in again, anger replacing the test. My arm lifted on instinct and caught his wrist. I did not squeeze hard. I thought I did not. Daigo froze. His knees bent slightly, not from pain, but from the sudden knowledge that his strength was no longer in control. The courtyard went silent. That silence was different from Hakusei's silence. It was not waiting for me to crawl. It was trying to understand why I had not fallen. I let go at once and stepped back. "I don't want trouble," I said. To me, my voice sounded small. To everyone else, it sounded like a warning. By the end of the day, the first clip had spread through Kokuryu. The transfer student who dodged too cleanly, the weird one, the dangerous one. That night in my collapsing studio, I stared at my hand and remembered Daigo's wrist under my fingers. For the first time, someone had tried to hit me and failed in front of witnesses. It should have felt like victory. Instead, I wondered what else my body could do before I was ready to stop it. The next morning, Kokuryu already had a version of me I did not recognize. In the sports building, I was secretly trained. In the business wing, I was the hidden son of some powerful family. In the MediaTrack group chat, I was a slowed-down clip with captions I never asked for. At Hakusei, Ryuji had controlled my label. At Kokuryu, the whole school was trying to create one without permission. That was the first real cost of the pearl. It did not only make me stronger, it made me visible. The program groups tested that visibility in different ways. Sports track tried the obvious way first. A second year dropped a basketball at my feet and told me to pass through 3 players if I wanted to leave the gym corridor. He wanted either a clean clip of me showing off or a clean clip of me backing down. I gave him neither. I looked at their shoes, their spacing, and the small reflection in the office window behind them. Their shoulders were loose because this was theater for them, not real pressure. They needed me to enter their game so they could define the rules. So I picked up the ball, placed it gently on the floor, and walked through the only path where all 3 of them would be visible in the window. Nobody touched me, their leader cursed because the trap had lost its shape. That was a small win, but the rumor still changed. By lunch, people were not asking if I was strong. They were asking why I refused to prove it. The business track used a softer knife. A boy with a silver watch sat beside me in the cafeteria and asked where my father worked. His name was Riku Kanzaki. I had already heard it twice that morning, because students said his family donated to Kokuryu's development fund and spoke to teachers like they were service staff. When I said I lived with my mother, his eyes changed, not with pity, with calculation. He offered to introduce me to people who could manage my situation if I cooperated with the right crowd. He said my reputation had value now, and value should not be wasted. I knew that smile. Ryuji smiled like that when he wanted me to thank him for humiliation. I told Riku I did not need management. By the end of the day, a rumor spread that I was arrogant. The media track wanted proof of anything. They pretended to film themselves while keeping me in the background. One girl asked why I stopped wearing glasses. Another whispered that maybe I had changed my face because I was ashamed of the old one. Old's that word caught in me. I had an old face now, an old body, an old life. Pearl had made a better version of my body, but it had not erased the boy everyone had recorded. Near the stairwell, 3 boys from an underground sparring circle blocked a first-year scholarship student and told him to apologize for looking at one of their girlfriends. First year had not done anything. I knew because his hands were open, his eyes searched for exits, and he was already bowing before they finished accusing him. I knew that posture too well. The smart choice was to leave. My place at Kokuryu was already fragile. One more incident could turn teachers against me. One more clip could reach my mother. One more wrong angle could turn self-defense into proof that I was dangerous. Then the tallest boy shoved the first year into the wall. My body moved. Not violently, not the way the rumors wanted. I stepped between them and said his apology was enough. The tallest boy looked delighted. He had been waiting for me to enter the frame. He swung wide, not to hit cleanly, but to give the phone behind him a dramatic angle. This time I saw more than the punch. I saw the phone. I saw the teacher at the bottom of the stairs, pretending not to notice. I saw the path where I could move without touching anyone, so I moved only one step. The punch missed and struck the locker beside my shoulder with a hollow bang. Before anyone could turn that sound into a story, I looked straight at the teacher. "Sir," I said loud enough for the hallway, "can you help us?" That ruined the clip. The teacher had no choice. Too many students were watching him watch. Later, Vice Principal Sakamoto told me that wherever I went, trouble followed. He warned that repeated incidents could affect my transfer status. Kokuryu valued discipline, reputation, and appropriate conduct. I knew what those words meant. Do not make important families uncomfortable. Afterward, the first year waited near the vending machines. His name was now a scholarship student from the academic track. He bowed so deeply I felt embarrassed. "You didn't have to help me," he said. I wanted to say I did. Instead, I told him to avoid stairwells and stay near places where adults had fewer excuses to be blind. At night, another clip spread, not the full scene, only the part where I stood in front of 3 boys and none of them passed me. The caption said, "Kokuryu's new monster." Under it, someone posted an old Hakusei video. A skinny boy with thick glasses, a plastic bag of snacks, chocolate bread clenched in his mouth while students laughed. The comment asked one question: isn't this him? Far away, in the part of my life I had tried to escape, Reiji Kuragain was about to hear my name again. And somewhere beyond both schools, someone else was watching the clip travel. I told myself I went back to the old town because I needed clothes. That was a lie. I went because my mother had called twice that week, and both times I had answered like a person hiding inside his own voice. She asked if I was eating, I said yes. She asked if Kokuryu was better, I said yes. She asked if I had made friends, I said a few. Then she paused and asked why I sounded tired. I almost told her not everything. Not the pearl, not my changed body. Not the rumors or the fights or the way students now stepped aside when I passed. But maybe enough. And I pictured her seeing one of those clips and wondering if sending me away had turned me into someone dangerous. So I said school was just busy. That night I took the last train back to the old town. Her takoyaki stall was still open when I arrived. My mother stood beneath the small red awning, turning batter with practiced movements. Steam rose around her face. Customers came and went, never knowing how much of her life was inside each tray. I stayed across the street, hidden near a shuttered shop. I had imagined walking up to her. I had imagined saying I was okay. I had imagined giving back the emergency money and telling her she did not have to work so hard anymore. But my feet would not move. After the last customer left, she cleaned the grill alone. Her shoulders sagged when no one was watching. She flexed her fingers slowly, the way she did when the burns ached. Then she packed the stall, tied the trash bags, and carried folded cardboard boxes to the side of the road. At first, I thought she was throwing them away. Then she stacked them carefully and tied them with string. A recycling truck stopped near the corner. The driver weighed the cardboard and handed her a few coins. My mother bowed like he had done her a favor. Something inside me went cold. She was not only selling takoyaki. After closing the stall, after standing for hours, after sending me money she could not spare, she was collecting cardboard at night for a little extra income. For me, I looked down at my hands. These were the hands that had stopped Dago. These were the hands that could hold back 3 students without shaking. And still, my mother was tying cardboard in the dark. For the first time since the pearl changed me, I felt truly powerless. Not because I could not win a fight, because fighting was not the problem. The real problem was that kind people could work until their hands burned and still not be safe. Mother could give everything and still have to smile while her son lied to her. I took one step forward, then stopped. If she saw me watching, she would smile. She would hide the cardboard like it was nothing. She would ask if I had eaten. I could not bear that, so I stayed hidden until she pulled the cart down the road. My new body wanted action. Wanted to cross the street, carry everything for her, and swear that no one would ever make her work again. But strength without a plan was only noise. I had already seen what people did when power only made them feel taller. I would not become that. By the time I returned to Kokuryu, my goal had changed. I did not just need to survive school. I needed money, legitimacy, protection, a way to stand beside my mother without making her afraid of what I had become. And if Kokuryu's hierarchy kept testing me, I would stop letting it choose the rules. The next trap came with a crying first year and a perfect camera angle. She was an arts track student holding a torn sketchbook near the old club storage building. 3 business track boys stood around her without touching her, without shouting, and without doing anything obvious enough for a teacher to punish. That was how I knew it was planned. Riku Kanzaki, the silver watch boy from the cafeteria, stood beside them like he had only arrived by coincidence. He smiled when he saw me. Perfect timing, Arai. Arts track girl looked at me like I was both rescue and danger. That hurt more than I expected, because I understood why. The clips had made me useful and frightening at the same time. Riku explained the situation too smoothly. The girl had supposedly damaged club property. She owed money. They were only discussing repayment. If I interfered, I would be inserting myself into a private matter. The girl's fingers tightened around the sketchbook. One corner of the cover had been ripped on purpose. I knew fear when I saw it. I stepped closer and asked if she wanted to leave. Riku's smile sharpened. The phone in his friend's hand was already recording. That was the setup. If I grabbed someone, I was violent. If I threatened them, I was the monster from the clips. If I did nothing, the girl stayed trapped. That was what made the trap cruel. It did not need to beat me. It only needed to make every choice look wrong. One of Riku's boys reached for the sketchbook again. My body reacted before my judgment finished choosing. I caught his wrist and turned his hand away from her. It was not an attack. It was restraint. But in the phone's frame, it looked like the strongest student in school had seized a weaker boy for no reason. The boy dropped to one knee on purpose and cried out. Students appeared from around the corner as if they had been waiting for a signal. Riku did not move. He only said everyone saw that. By the end of the hour, the clip was everywhere. It did not show the torn sketchbook. It did not show the girl boxed in. It did not show the hand reaching first. It did not show how little force I used. It showed me standing over another student while he knelt. The caption said I had finally snapped. Vice Principal Sakamoto called me in before final period. He told me Kokuryu could not afford a violent transfer student with an unknown background. He mentioned parent complaints. He mentioned reputation. He mentioned that some students were afraid. I asked if he had spoken to the arts track girl. He said that was not the issue. That told me everything. The issue was never whether I had protected someone. The issue was whether Kokuryu could explain me cleanly. And I returned to class, no one spoke. Fear had changed shape. Before, students were afraid of what I might do. Now they were afraid of being seen near me. Now waited outside after school. He looked nervous, but he did not run. I know you didn't start it, he said. That should have helped. It did not. Because one honest witness could not fight 100 dishonest views. That evening, my mother called. I stared at her name until the ringing almost stopped. When I answered, her voice was careful. Yuto, are you all right? My chest tightened. Yeah, why? I saw something online. The room seemed to shrink. She did not accuse me. She only said a neighbor had sent a clip and asked if it was me. She said videos could lie. Then she asked, very quietly, whether the new school was safe. Not whether I was safe from others. Whether the school was safe around me. That was the cost I had been afraid of. My mother had sent me away to escape cruelty. Now the world was showing her a version of me that looked like cruelty wearing my face. I told her it was a misunderstanding. I told her not to worry. My own words tasted fake. After the call, I looked at my changed reflection in the window. The pearl had given me a body that could survive almost anything Kokuryu threw at me. But it had not given me proof. It had not given me trust. It had not given me the power to make my mother believe a clip was lying. Then a new message appeared in the school group chat. Someone had posted the old Hakusei clip again. This time there was another comment under it. Reiji Kurigane wants to know why his dog is pretending to be a wolf. The old world had found me. And if I kept reacting the old way, both schools would decide what I was before I did. I did not sleep much after Reiji's name appeared. Old fear has a way of surviving new strength. My body could move faster than Dago's punch, but one sentence from Reiji still reached parts of me the pearl had not touched. His dog. That was what he wanted me to be again. The next morning, I went to Kokuryu early and watched the school like a map. Not as a victim looking for exits, as someone studying a system. Sports track owned physical space. They blocked doors, crowded halls, and used games as excuses for dominance. Business track owned rules. They knew which teachers cared about donations, which forms could delay complaints, and which words sounded harmless in official reports. Media track owned attention. They did not need to win if they could decide what everyone saw afterward. And students like now owned almost nothing, which meant they became useful bait. At Hakusei, I had survived by reading the room too late. At Kokuryu, I needed to read it early enough to change the outcome. At lunch, I knew Riku's pattern. He never held the phone himself. He never gave the first order directly. He made weaker students act, then stood far enough away to look uninvolved. So I changed the shape of the next incident before it began. I asked now to stay near the main courtyard after class, not alone, near the front office windows, where every angle reflected in the glass. I asked the arts track girl to keep her torn sketchbook with her if she felt safe enough. She hesitated, then nodded. Her name was Hina. That was the first time I heard it. Riku came exactly where I expected him to come, because people who think they control a system rarely believe someone underneath them can map it. He brought 2 boys, 1 phone, and the same polite smile. He accused Hina of spreading lies. He told Now to stop following a dangerous transfer student. Then he turned to me and asked whether I needed weak people around to feel strong. The words were bait. This time I did not bite. I spoke loudly enough for the windows and nearby students. Tell them what happened to her sketchbook. Riku laughed. What sketchbook? Hina lifted it. Her hands shook, but she lifted it. Now stepped beside her and said he had seen Riku's friend tear it before I arrived. His voice cracked, but he kept going. A MediaTrack student lowered her phone when she realized she was not recording a fight. She was recording testimony. Riku's expression changed for 1 second. That was the real punch, not mine. The truth landing where people could see it. One of his boys panicked and tried to grab the sketchbook. My body moved, but this time my mind arrived with it. I stepped between them without touching him. He stumbled back on his own. From the front office window, a teacher saw everything. The boy shouted that I had threatened him. Hina shouted first. No, he didn't. The courtyard turned toward her. That was the first time someone at Kokuryu defended me before I defended myself. It was not a perfect victory. Riku did not collapse. The administration did not apologize. The rumor machine did not become honest overnight. But the clip that spread that day was different. It showed Hina holding the sketchbook. It showed Now speaking. It showed Riku's smile slipping. It showed me standing still with my hands open. The caption was simple. Maybe Arai is not the problem. That was my first real progress at Kokuryu. Not a faster dodge, not a stronger grip, a witness who could say what actually happened. That evening, Vice Principal Sakamoto called me in again. This time, there was a new folder on his desk, Kokuryu's Interprogram Evaluation. Public event where students from every track competed in physical, academic, strategic, and leadership trials. High scorers received school protection, stipend access, sponsor recommendations, and scholarship bonuses. Normally, transfer students could not enter mid-year. Normally. Sakamoto said Kokuryu needed to settle the rumors before they damaged the school further. If I entered and performed under supervision, the administration could classify my abilities and control the narrative. He presented it like a warning. I heard opportunity. Stipend, scholarship, money that did not come from my mother's burned hands. Public stage where Riku could not choose every angle. Chance to make Ryoji's old video stand beside what I had become. I signed the application. As I left the office, Now and Hina waited in the hallway. Neither looked fully brave, but neither looked away. Are you really entering? Now asked. I nodded. Hina hugged her sketchbook to her chest. Then everyone will watch. That was true. Kokuryu would watch. Riku would watch. The teachers would watch. And soon, because the old clip had traveled too far, Ryoji Kurigane would watch too. For the first time, I did not plan to hide from it. Interprogram evaluation was supposed to measure talent. In reality, it measured power in the language Kokuryu respected most, public results. That was why the gym was full before the first round even started. Sports track students filled the lower seats. Business track students gathered near the staff tables. Media track students stood wherever the lighting was good. Teachers watched from the edges, pretending this was only school procedure and not a trial for one transfer student. Then I stepped onto the evaluation floor, and the hierarchy started making mistakes. First round tested physical coordination. Students ran obstacle lanes while sensors tracked balance, reaction time, and recovery. Dago entered with a grin, probably hoping to reclaim the courtyard clip. I did not try to humiliate him, I just moved. My body treated the course like it had been waiting for permission. My feet landed before the platforms finished shifting. My hands caught bars without searching. When a rotating barrier came toward me, I saw its path and slid through the gap before anyone shouted. The scoreboard froze, then corrected itself. First place. The gym went quiet. That silence became my first progress receipt. No one could explain it as luck anymore. The second round tested judgment. Teams were given a simulated campus crisis and asked to allocate resources. Riku expected me to fail there. He had told everyone my strength was only physical. A monster body with a poor boy's brain. Poor people understand resources. We understand what happens when one mistake costs dinner. While richer students protected the highest value zones first, I moved support to the weak points. Emergency exits, scholarship dorms, old buildings, places everyone assumed could wait because they had always waited. My plan saved the most students in the simulation. One teacher whispered that my priorities were unusual. I wanted to tell him they were just learned from being disposable. At the final public round, Kokuryu no longer treated me like a random transfer. Students were still afraid, but the fear had changed. It was no longer the easy fear people feel toward a rumor. It was the careful fear people feel when the rumor keeps producing evidence. That was when Ryoji arrived. He did not wear the Hakusei uniform. He did not need to. His name was enough. He walked in with 2 Kokuryu business track students. Like old money and new ambition had shaken hands behind my back. Students whispered. Riku's smile returned. He had brought my old shame. The screen above the evaluation floor flickered. Then the Hakusei clip played. Me thinner and smaller, with thick glasses sliding down my face. Me carrying snacks in my mouth while students laughed. Me bending down after Ryuji slapped the bread onto the courtyard stones. Gym filled with whispers. A few students laughed nervously because they did not know yet whether laughter was safe. My body went still, not because I could not move, because old Yuto had returned in front of everyone. Ryuji stepped onto the floor smiling. I was worried Kokuryu didn't know who they were praising, he said. This is Yuto Arai. At Hakusei he knew his place. The words hit harder than any punch. For 1 second I was back in that courtyard. My shoulders wanted to fold inward, my eyes searched for the floor. Pearl could change muscle, bone, balance, and breath, but it had not deleted memory. Then Hina spoke. That video doesn't show what you think it shows. Now stood beside her, Dago looked away from the screen. Even students who feared me looked uncomfortable, because cruelty is easier to enjoy when the victim never becomes real. Ryuji laughed and tossed a packaged snack toward my feet. Go on, he said, show them the trick. The room held its breath, that was the real test. My new body could cross the distance before anyone reacted. I could make him afraid, I could make him kneel. I could make the entire gym watch him, crawl the way he had made me crawl. And a part of me wanted to, that was the part I feared most. Because it sounded like justice, but it felt like Ryuji. Then I saw my mother's hands, burned, rough, holding money she did not have, tying cardboard at night while I learned what power could do. She had not sent me away so I could become a better bully. I picked up the snack, Ryuji's smile widened. Then I placed it gently on the nearest table. No, one word, enough. Ryuji stepped closer and asked if I was still scared. Riku's friend raised a phone, hoping for the explosion. So I gave them something else. I turned toward the teachers, evaluators, students, and phones. At Hakusei he made me buy snacks with my own money, I said. He made me carry them in my mouth. Teachers saw it, students recorded it, no one stopped him. My voice shook at first, then steadied. I was weak then, that part is true, but the problem was never that I was weak. The problem was that everyone decided weakness made me available. Ryuji lunged, my body read him instantly. I stepped away, his hand caught air, he tried again. I turned, caught his sleeve, and guided his own momentum past me. He stumbled, but I did not drop him. I could have, everyone knew it. That was why the room changed. The strongest thing I did was not hitting him harder, it was choosing not to. Ryuji shouted that I was still nothing. He ordered the business track boys to grab me, but they hesitated because orders sound different when the person giving them is losing. One of them came anyway. I moved once, not a strike, not a punishment. I took his wrist, turned his shoulder away from Hina and Now, and let him drop safely to one knee because his balance had nowhere else to go. The gym gasped, I released him immediately. Stand up, I said. He stared at me. I repeated it, stand up, I'm not making anyone crawl. That sentence crossed the gym like a crack through glass. Phones were still recording, but the meaning had changed. They were not filming a monster attacking people. They were filming someone with every reason to humiliate his enemy, refusing to do it. Vice Principal Sakamoto ordered the screen turned off. His voice was stiff, but he did not blame me. Not this time. There were too many witnesses and too many angles. The evaluators reviewed the final round. My score stood. More than that, my conduct score rose. Restraint under provocation, protection of other students, leadership potential. The stipend path opened. The scholarship review opened. Kokuryu could not dismiss me anymore, without explaining why a student who refused to attack under public humiliation was the threat. Ryuji left before the final announcements. He did not run, people like him rarely run in public, but he walked out faster than he entered, and nobody laughed for him. Riku did not speak either. For the first time since I arrived at Kokuryu, his silence was not strategy, it was damage. As for me, I stood on the evaluation floor with every phone pointed my way, and felt no victory parade inside my chest. I had not erased the boy in the Hakusei clip. I had carried him into the light. And this time when everyone watched, I did not crawl. After the evaluation, Kokuryu changed its distance from me. Some students moved away faster when I entered the hallway. Fear was still fear, even when dressed as respect. Some students bowed their heads slightly, then pretended they had not. Others whispered less when I passed. The media track students still recorded, but their captions changed. Monster became mystery, dangerous became disciplined, transfer problem became top evaluation candidate. It was not kindness, not exactly, it was adjustment. School had misread me, and now it was correcting the label without apologizing for the damage. Ego found me near the vending machines 2 days later. He stood there holding a sports drink, and looking like the words in his mouth were heavier than the bottle. He said he had watched the full Hakusei clip, then he said Ryuji was trash. For Daigo that was probably an apology. I accepted it that way. Hina and Now became the first people at Kokuryu who did not approach me for rumor, protection, or status. Hina showed me a repaired sketchbook cover with tape along the edge. Now told me some first years had started using the front office hallway instead of the stairwell because bullies avoided places where adults could not pretend blindness anymore. That felt better than the stipend notice, almost. The official notice arrived after final period. Kokuryu had approved provisional school protection for me as an interprogram evaluation candidate. My scholarship review had been moved forward. Small performance stipend would be released at the end of the month, with sponsor interviews possible if my conduct remained stable. Conduct remained stable. I read that phrase 3 times. It was the school's way of saying they still did not trust me, but the money was real. Not enough to save my mother by itself. Not enough to erase years of burns, late nights, and cardboard stacks. But enough to send something back without asking her to give more first. That was the difference between a fantasy and a path. Fantasy says everything is fixed because I won once. A path says the first step finally belongs to me. I went to the post office after school and filled out the transfer slip carefully. The clerk asked if I needed help. I shook my head. I wrote my mother's name, Yuto Arai. For the message, I wanted to write everything. I wanted to tell her I was sorry for yelling. I wanted to tell her I knew about the cardboard. I wanted to tell her the clips were not the whole truth. I wanted to tell her I was scared of becoming someone she would not recognize. Instead, I wrote a simple note. For groceries, I'm okay, I'll call soon. It was not enough, but it was the first money I had sent her with my own hands. That night, the stipend receipt lay on my desk beside my old glasses. I looked at both and understood the truth. I was no longer invisible. That was progress, that was also danger. The white pearl had given me the body that made all this possible. The school called it talent, students called it danger, the clips called it mystery. I still did not know what it was, and I still did not know why the man in yellow sunglasses had known my name. By then, Kokuryu had begun treating me like a person worth measuring. The person who mattered most was still working under a red awning, smiling at strangers while her hands hurt. Before I could face the mystery of the pearl, I needed to go back to the street where my strength still felt useless. I needed to see my mother again. The old town looked smaller when I returned, but my mother's stall looked the same. Steam rose under the red awning. The takoyaki pan clicked softly as she turned each piece. Her hair was tied back. Her shoulders were tired. Her smile still appeared whenever a customer came close, as if she could fold exhaustion away for strangers but not for herself. I stood across the street again. This time there was money on its way to her. Not much, but mine. Earned under Kokuryu's lights, under every stare that had tried to turn me into a monster. It should have made crossing the street easier. It did not. My mother looked down at her phone between customers. For a moment, her expression changed. Maybe she had seen the transfer notification. Maybe she had read my message. Maybe she was wondering why I sent money before telling her the truth. She pressed the phone against her chest. Then the next customer arrived, and she smiled again. I took one step forward, then stopped. The distance between us was not the width of the street. It was every lie I had told to keep her from worrying, every clip she had seen without context, every bruise I had hidden before the pearl, every part of me that had changed too quickly for either of us to understand. Still, I did not turn away because I wanted to run. I turned away because I finally had a plan. I would keep earning, I would keep studying the rules, I would protect people without making them kneel. I would become strong enough to stand beside her honestly, not just appear in the dark with guilt in my throat. That was the best answer I had for now. Not revenge. Not pride. A promise I had not spoken yet. Behind me, someone clapped once. Slowly. I knew that sound before I turned. The alley beside the shuttered shop was almost black, but the yellow sunglasses caught the streetlight like 2 small coins. The man from the new city stepped out with the same calm smile. He looked at my changed body, then at my mother's stall, then back at me. You grew well, Yuto Arai, he said. My hand tightened at my side. The night felt colder. He had not come to explain the pearl. He had not come to ask whether I was happy. He had not come like a savior checking on someone he helped. He looked like someone checking an investment that had finally started producing returns. I stepped between him and the view of my mother, even though he had not moved toward her. What do you want? His smile widened. Now it's time you repay my kindness.